Put this close. This afternoon in the by the picnic, I quoted this Zohar, which is talking about Acharei Mot Shnei Bnei Haron, after the death of Nadav and Avihu, the children of Aharon. And on that, the Zohar brings these two verses, Ivdu et Hashem b'yirah, and then it says, Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha, V'gilu berada is b'yirah, fear, literally translated, usually translated, I shouldn't say literally, but usually translated, it means with fear, and Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha, and serve God with simcha, bo lefanav birnana, and come before Him with joy, with song. And the Zohar says, Mikraot elu sotrim zeh et zeh. It says that these two verses contradict each other. And the reason he brings it here is because the death of Nadav and Avihu, the two sons of Aharon, and here the Zohar will mention that they were not only tzaddikim, but Nadav had a level of consciousness like Moshe. Not that he was as great as Moshe, but in that category of where his level of consciousness was, that it encompassed the entire consciousness of all the Jews. So you can imagine how Aharon felt, losing two sons at one time, and not just two sons, but two individuals that were so close to God. And how could that have happened? Last year and the year before, I could only think of that they thought that once, and this happened on the day that the Mishkan, the tabernacle, was erected. It was after Moshe served 7 days. First Moses served 7 days before Rosh Chodesh Nisan, because Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the tabernacle was erected. I'm sorry, it was when Aharon began, but it was erected actually 7 days, but the actual function of the priesthood began on Rosh Chodesh. And Moses served there first, so you can imagine the kind of energy that was prevailing amongst all the Jews at the time. And then at that moment, he loses his two sons, and the sorrow was incredible. So the normal people would certainly think of how would anyone feel, Chas v'sholem, if they were faced with the same predicament. And so the Zohar wants to say that while Aharon, and it says immediately Aharon did this service, and we know that if he was not in Simcha, he would not be permitted to perform the avodah, the service in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle. So what the Zohar really is attempting here, when he brings these two contradictory verses, is to stress the point of how could Aaron serve, which we have to assume he was besimcha. At the same time, look at what happened to him. So the Zohar answers the contradiction of the two verses first. Elakach lamadnu. Ivdu et Hashem b'yira, ki b'kol avodah sherotzeh ha'adam la'avod lifnei Ribono. Before he wants to do something, before the Ribono, God, or the life force, whatever, b'tchilat tzarich yira. B'tchilat, you have to have fear. L'yira mipanav. Ubishvil yirat Ribono, and because of this fear of the Lord, yisku la'achakach la'asod b'simcha mitzvat Torah. And he brings the verse, Ma Hashem lakecha sho'el mimcha. What does God want from us? Ki im liyira. First, if we're going along with the idea that it means fear, to fear. Sha'al yada yiska lakol. Because through fear, then you achieve everything else. Now, the Zohar asks in many other places, it says, V'yafta et Hashem lakecha, in the Kriyat Shema. Begins off the first padding, the first section in the Kriyat Shema, after Shema Yisrael Baruch Shem, V'yafta et Hashem lakecha. You should love your God. And Zohar himself asks, how could you love something that you can't see, you can't feel, you can't touch? After all, we are governed by the five senses. So how could you love God? How could you love God? And the Zohar answers, the only way you can come to love God is if you have yira. But then the same question is, how could you fear God if you've never seen Him? Yeah, people can say, God will punish you. I mean, and if someone, Chas v'Sholom, is punished, who punished him? God punished him. Of course, punishment never comes, doesn't always come through driving a car and went into a tree. And someone will say, well, see, God punished him. What's the assurance? What's the certainty that God punished him? Man went out of control, or whoever, and that's how it happened. So what do you mean, God? And from what we understand, that God doesn't punish, period. God doesn't punish. How could God punish if there's only an attribute of lahitiv? That means in the consciousness of the light, and that's what proactive means. Be proactive. Can't be negative and be proactive at the same time. It's contradictory. Proactive or reactive. How could you want to punish? The only time you can say, I want to punish someone, even on our level, I want to get back at somebody, or I want to take revenge on somebody. It means that person did something wrong to me, and so I react, and now I want it. But God, can anyone do anything wrong to God? No. So if that is not possible, then on what basis is there to assume that God is going to do something wrong? For what reason? And the answer is, God doesn't punish, and that's the conclusion we came to. And if a person undergoes some form of chaos, what do we say? We caused it. Because you can't attribute it to God. So we're back to the ayah. So what does it mean to fear God? Why? What do you mean fear Him? What do you mean fear Him? How could you fear Him? Well, He'll punish you. Like someone here in the center who had grown up as an Orthodox individual, and one day decided he wanted to leave it all. Well, goes over to his car, opens the car, and turns the motor on. And at that moment, what? On Shabbat. And at that moment, he was waiting for God to kill him. Because it says in the Torah that if you desecrate the Shabbat, if you kill a Mot Yamut, you're going to die. You're going to die. And he said, he didn't die. In fact, nothing even happened. He didn't even wind up in an accident. So, could we assume that that God is, punishes? More times out of none. Good people are punished, so to speak. By whom? And so, what the Zohar is trying to say here in its answer to the question, how did Aaron survive this terrible thing that happened to him? Even though it says that when it happened, Vayidom, he was quiet. And the Zohar says, and Rashi says, and everybody says, how come he was, he didn't cry, he didn't say, because he knew that because of what he had done by the story of the golden calf, remember, he took the gold directly. If he hadn't, he should have thrown it on. He should have told him to throw it on the ground, and then he'd pick it up, and the whole golden calf incident would never have taken place. And because of that, although his intent was to stall, I mean, he had no intent of making a golden calf, and he didn't know at that moment, let's say, or he was not aware at that moment that when he would take the gold in his hand, that only by his taking it directly from Yunus v'Yumbrus, who were the two culprits there, the two Chozim b'Tshuva, that's what they were, two Chozim b'Tshuva, and he took it directly from them. And because he realized that out came the golden calf, and that was the wrong thing, and therefore he was punished. And this was his punishment. And now he's going to serve with simcha. First of all, what about the beside the fact that he lost his two sons? On top of that, he realized that he was being punished. On top of that, and in spite of all of this, he could still serve, and he had to serve with simcha, because you can't serve if you're in a depressed state of mind. A Kohen is not allowed to serve, because we know that we know the power of the Kohen, and we know from Yaakov, why didn't Yaakov see that Yosef was alive and that he was sold by his brothers? Why didn't he see all this? We're talking about a chariot who is beyond the limitation of chariot is beyond the limitation of time, space, and motion. So for him, the whole world was all in unity. It was one. The same way as when God said, I'll give you the entire land of Israel, on which you lie on. How much space did he occupy? And so Rashi and all of the commentators answer immediately that the whole of Israel rolled up under his head. What do you mean the whole of Israel rolled up under his head? I mean rolled up, like we discussed that in that Parsha. In Vayikra. What do you mean it rolled up? And the answer is, when we say rolled up, meaning the whole world is rolled up right where I am. I'm the whole universe. Not, of course, from an ego's point of view, because from an ego point of view, there's nothing under your head. All you have is the ego. But if the idea of ego has been completely eliminated, which by a chariot is the case, so why didn't, so he was beyond that. And that's why the whole of the land of Israel, at that one pinpoint, on a physical level, it's everything, but initially the unity of the whole world is wrapped up in no time, space, or motion. That's no time, space, or motion. So it can be under his head. If that's where his consciousness is, then the whole world is there. So how come he didn't see that Yosef was alive? And so it says in the Zohar that because he was depressed for that moment, that Yosef would not be with him, what preceded his vision, at that moment, they said Yosef was torn apart by an animal, a wild animal, and he died. That moment is when Satan caught him, and he fell into the state that we would normally fall into, a state of depression. Same here by Aharon. What a state of depression. But we know that because of that state of depression, then the Shekhinah was not with him. Then therefore, how did Aharon survive this? How did he, he saw this happening, and he still served. If he's in a depressed state like Yaakov was, he can't serve. Can't serve because the service of a Kohen was not just he's the Kohen, and all due respect to Zev, but just because you're a Kohen doesn't give you all this entitlement. Although there are entitlements to a Kohen, but it's not an entitlement. The Kohen has that ability to achieve levels of consciousness that an Israelite, beside a tzaddik, we're not going into it, but he has that inbuilt structure that immediately could project him into a state of Shekhinah. Okay, so that's what happened to Aharon, but still, how did he overcome this state of depression? Not to fall into it like Yaakov. I mean, where was the difference? Where was the difference? The difference is, I think, quite obvious. I mean, right now it's quite obvious to me. Yaakov, when he lost Yosef, he couldn't put it together. I mean, like, Why is he losing Yosef? I mean, why would Yosef was a chariot at that time too, although before he became Yosef Hatzadik, when he rose into the level, the upper level, a higher level of Zeir Rampin, but like all the other brothers, they were all chariots, like Yosef. He was the chariot for the zodiac sign of Pisces, like all of his other brothers. They were all chariots, meaning their levels of consciousness was above the material level. They were both material in that level and also in the upper realm. So Yaakov could not grasp, even though he was Yaakov, but he could not grasp the idea. An animal can't eat up Yosef, but an animal did. So there was a flaw. Somewhere there was a flaw. Somewhere there was a flaw. And therefore, couldn't understand it. He didn't know what flaw, because for him, Yosef didn't have a flaw. So what happened here? So that was enough at that moment where he couldn't answer. He didn't have an answer. That was enough for Satan to put him into depression. Then, work on him. Say, what are you going to rationalize? The loss of a Nadav? You're going to rationalize it? That's how he tried to speak to Aaron. But Aaron saw what they did. He saw the picture. Saw the whole picture. Yaakov did not see the whole picture. He didn't know what was going on and how and what and when. Wasn't even there. But Aaron saw with his own eyes. So that's the difference. And therefore it says, Vayidom. And therefore he did not go into that depressed state. So what do we conclude from the difference between Yaakov and Aaron, who both suffered terrible losses? I mean, outside of the fact that Yosef was Ben Zekunim, as it says, whatever that means, but that he was, obviously he made him the coat, so he was the preferred son, for however we interpret preference. But he was the most revered by Yaakov, and therefore it was obvious that he fell into a state of depression. And because he fell into a state of depression, he lost that connection with the Shekhinah. That's how serious a depressed state is. But Aharon did not fall into it. The question is, how come he didn't fall into it? He saw. Okay, so he saw. He saw the reason that they went ahead and did the korban. They wanted to do the korban. They went into the Kodesh Kodeshim, the Holy of Holies. He saw all this. Now, how does that take away from the fact that it still was Nadav that no longer was amongst the living in this world? How did he still? Because we know that immediately he served. So we can't answer he didn't serve, or it took him a few days, and he recouped, and he revived himself and elevated himself back to a former state. Right away, immediately, he served. And in that state of depression, he could not serve. And the Zohar brings another part. It says, Yet Hashem Reshit Dat. The fear, we're still going on to the idea of fear, it's the beginning of knowledge. You can't have knowledge without fear of God. That itself is a contradiction. I mean, if someone didn't tell me you have to fear God, they were little children, and someone tells me, you have to fear God. So now I have knowledge to fear God. But it says, Reishit Hashem, Yirat Hashem is Reishit Dat. That's the way you can get to Dat. It's before. It precedes information, knowledge. How? How do you get to the fear? And he's telling us that it's before. But so what? So what? And then it says Reishit Chachma. What precedes Chachma? Yirat Hashem. Yirat Hashem. How do you? If someone doesn't have wisdom, how can you really achieve? I mean, if we learn that fear means like, little child fears a parent. Why does he fear the parent? Why does he fear the parent? Be many reasons. We can give reasons. Does a child have dat? But he can get fear from a parent. Why? One time he wanted to do something. The parent told him no. And he still did it. What did the parent do? Gave him a little smack on his hand or on his backside. Now he want to do it again. Try to do it so the parent doesn't see. Already he's developing a little fear. That we can understand. That's a little wisdom from that little child. Child has a little fear. And now that little fear, what's the fear? The fear that he may get another little tap on his finger. Now he's becoming a chacham. He says, well, I'll do it where they can't see. Right? So already the fear has exercised now the survival of the fittest. How am I going to survive not getting another beating? Right? So he starts using his sechel. He says, when they won't be there, I'll take the cookie that they said I shouldn't have. Again, exercising a little wisdom. But when you're talking about God, how does fear develop into wisdom, into knowledge, and so on? How? So all of these different questions that we raise about fear, obviously, many, many years ago, I realized, many years ago, I realized that's not true, but in any event, I understood, I was told to understand, that Iyar comes from the word to see also. It's strange that the fear and seeing is synonymous. It's synonymous. Seeing is synonymous with fear. Now what does it mean? These two words are interchangeable. Should we ever use it in the way of fear? No. The more appropriate word is seeing. Why? Because that little child, the fact that he got a little tap on his hand, is not a reason. Fear of a parent is not a reason why he's not going to try that for that cookie jar. Try again. Now the parent was so smart, they counted how many cookies were in the jar. Now there's one missing. Also, they outsmarted him, right? Now the child has to figure out a way how he'll beat him on that score. Little children, when we're little children, we go through these episodes of using our brain. When we get older already, we don't use the brain. We use the brain to count money. We use the brain for many other things, but never do we use our brain like a child does. Like a child does. Amazing. Amazing. That's why we say we want to go back into our mother's womb, which is the secret of immortality. The reason we want to do that is because that's the most purest level. There, the child sees everything. Everything. Because everything is included. If you go back to being with oneness with the DNA, you're part of the oneness with the DNA. You know what you're part of? Your whole future. Because the DNA already encapsulates everything that the future will ever have in store for us. That DNA. So we can go back to that point in time. Then that's what it means. That's what the Highlander said. That guy yesterday is amazing. Going back. So it means seeing. To achieve, and that's what to achieve this level of seeing the light force, and seeing the light force certainly not as something that will punish you, but seeing the light force being at oneness making every attempt to be at oneness with life force. Not that everybody achieves that, because that's our intent. Intent is not enough. Good intentions, you know about good intentions. That's what the road to Gehenom is lined with, is covered with. When Aharon saw what happened, and the Torah tells us Vayidom, and the Zohar and everybody else says, because he saw the picture. It wasn't the light force was punishing him, but he saw immediately. He put together the golden calf. He saw the whole picture. You have to see the whole picture. Now, how do you see the whole picture? Why did Aaron see the whole picture? And Yaakov didn't see the whole picture. Because he fell into depression. Why did he see the whole picture? So we have to look into Aaron's background. What was Aaron's background? What brought him to see the picture? Vayidom. Normally, Chas v'Sholom, a parent would lose 2 children like that. Two grown children, not little children that you don't know what they would, but he knew where they were already. He knew where their souls were at. So the pain and the loss is indescribable. But it says Vayidom, and he kept quiet because he saw it. Yaakov did not see it. Yaakov did not see the whole picture. Yaakov didn't see the whole picture. Because that picture with Yaakov, how come Yaakov was a chariot? Why didn't he see immediately? Because Yaakov's picture already embraced another idea. That the Jews had to be in Egypt. And somehow they had to go into Egypt. They had to go through that exile to be cleansed. So the reason that he was sold was that he ultimately would bring down all the Jews into Egypt. Because the future generations of the 210 years were all the same people who had lived in the time of Migdal Babel, in the time of the Tower of Babel, in the time of the flood, the great deluge. There was a purpose, but the purpose was not obvious to anybody. It's not obvious. Aaron saw, but because he had achieved a level of seeing, so he saw the whole picture at that moment. He could see. And first of all, it was simple to see because it was right there. But how did he achieve? Why did he achieve such a level? And actually, why didn't Yaakov see all that? Because unlike Yaakov, who lived a life, most of his life, he ran away from Esav. He took away his blessing, so to speak. No matter how we answer it, but he still was not the firstborn. No matter how we make every attempt to say he didn't lie, good. Yaakov didn't lie. When his father Yitzchak asked him, "Is that you, Esav?" He said, "Yeah." And then he said, "Yeah." And we interpret the verse, but he said yes, because his father still had in his consciousness the thought of blessing Esav. So no matter how we explain the verses over there that he didn't lie, but the fact was he was not the firstborn. He was not the firstborn. You always say, yeah, but Esav was a Rasha, he was an evil person, he wasn't entitled to the bracha. All well and good. All well and good. But he did something wrong, and Esav said he was going to kill him, so he went away. Didn't live a bad life by Lavan. Didn't live a bad life after that. The first time that he actually suffered was at the time when he lost Yosef. Other than that, he didn't interact with anybody. What did Aaron do? What was Aaron's interaction? And why was he really chosen to be the high priest? It says, because he was Ohev Shalom, Verodev Shalom. He loved peace in the world. Well, why did he love peace in the world? I mean, everybody wants peace. The trouble and the difference between Aaron's Ohev Shalom Verodev Shalom, he ran after every opportunity to bring peace into the world. And the difference with us, because to us, peace is conditional, if it's my way. Right? I have an argument with my neighbor, or my son, with my father, and so. Yeah. And, but an argument that leaves two people not happy. Well, it wasn't violent. Forget about it. It was chas v'sholem violent. But we're talking about that. It wasn't violent. Son with a father, daughter with a mother. They have difficulties. In those difficulties, is there shalom? No. Why? If there's no shalom, it's because each one rationalized why they were right. When he was Ohev Shalom, it was unconditional. It was unconditional. He wasn't looking why he was right or wrong. He was looking at the situation. If my action can bring to a disruption of shalom, no matter how right I am, but it brings in a little chaos. He went to such extent that he was rodef after that. What do you mean? He ran after it. In other words, he would run to make sure that despite how right he was, it was the shalom that he was looking for. That's why he was a rodef shalom. He was looking for the peace. So because I'm right, and the other person, and it's so obvious, and everybody, the whole world says, I'm right, and that person is wrong, and why is the person doing what they're doing, and so on. That never entered into Aaron's consciousness. And because of that, there was an interaction. Meaning, it's one thing for Yaakov, who was chariot, was everything, but there was no interaction with people. Not because he didn't want to. There were no other people. Yaakov was the son of Isaac, and the 12 tribes then multiplied into many, many Jews. Then later came the problem. There were more than one Jew, so you have a problem, right? But Yaakov, he was the only Jew. He had no problem. Who was he going to interact? But Aharon had Jews that he was dealing with all the time. And so he was Rodef Shalom. It's what we might say that self, who validates oneself? The ego. And what do you need validation? What's coming of this? Why validation? Are you achieving the purpose? Are you expressing yourself in a way that there is shalom? Or you're looking, what's right in the world? What's right for me? And if I'm right and if I'm wrong, and so that level of pursuit of Aaron, beside bringing him to the point of where he would now be the chosen one for the high priest of the Kohen Gadol, it enabled him because the word shalom was connected with what the universe is about. Universe is in shleimut. The universe is in harmony with each other. The universe we see around us, unfortunately, is not in harmony. But he elevated himself and saw that 99% or the 100% of the real universe is shalom. He's kind to everybody. Always had a smile. I mean, these are all the attributes that are stated concerning Aharon. Because he had this interaction with other Jews, and certainly they weren't very helpful, and they weren't very complimentary, and they weren't without criticism of Aharon. But nevertheless, he could only see one idea. He could only see one idea, the shleimut. He could see in every Jew that part that was part of everything. Yes, the physical reality and the activity of people were not so in line with or having an affinity with the soul. But the soul, the whole world is one soul. The whole world is one. And that gave him the opportunity, to see. So then what? Now his two sons didn't die. Yes, they were not there on a physical level, and he wasn't looking that they disappeared, because for him, the pain was that now these two sons could not serve and help because of their level of consciousness of where they had been and where they were, and now that was not available. So he saw the loss not so much in himself, because he didn't see no loss in himself at all. He knew about immortality, what we're talking about. He knew all that. But because his whole life had been one of an adventure into shalom, into shleimut, and therefore he was permitted to see the whole of the world, of the universe, in that shleimut. And therefore, when it came time for him to serve, why would he be depressed? The two sons were not for him. Two sons were not for him. For whatever reason, for justified reason, it was not a It was not a venture that he went into in trying to explain it away, why it happened, and so on. He explained it. It happened because in the cosmos he had created some form of negativity, and that negativity now came back and asked for payment due. It's like everything we do every day. There's always a payment due. The only trouble with that payment due, that was if we're not working the way we should, if we're lazy, someone else will do it. And we're living the life of comfortability, not to permit too many problems to come in and so on. The problem with that is that the payment due, the note that comes due, can be 20 years later, 50 years later. That was given to Satan, who was given permission to say, someone just stole. It's against the cardinal rule of the universe. You can't steal. Lechem b'zayon. You're taking away something from somebody, and you're not paying for it. So, when someone steals, so why doesn't his hand fall off? No, because we live in this world whereby payment due can be, as I said, 10 years later, 30 years later, but nobody escapes. But Satan makes sure that we will never think about it again. And even when the note comes due and there is no payment, he'll exact flesh. He'll exact the payment because he's entitled to the payment. We may not even connect the payment due to some negative activity that we had done. So the lesson is obvious. If all you can think about is what Aaron did, is looking not only to see the shleimut of the universe, the wholeness of the universe, the unity of the universe, but he was also a Rodesh Shalom. He ran after to make sure that's supposedly what we are in here for. That's why you join the Senate. If you didn't join the Senate for that reason, hopefully one day you'll achieve that. To understand that we have to be like Aharon if we ever want to achieve simcha. It cannot be simcha. He'll throw you a bone, Satan, make you feel good today. I got this, I got that. I got revenge. I did that back to this person because of this. Never can that person be in a state of shleimut, of simcha. Shleimut, seeing the whole universe as one, meaning you are part of that one and everybody else is part of that one, as Aharon did, is the only way that you can achieve real simcha. But if we're into our own little games, no matter how not unimportant, but no matter how it doesn't really affect negatively somebody else, right? So we're saying already, so what's wrong? So the person is playing little games, doing all little things that he should be recognized. He wants to feed a little his ego, and he's not hurting anybody by it. That's not enough. Yes, at least you're not a person that's doing harm to others, but you're not Rodesh Shalom. You're not making an attempt, and this is what the center is supposed to be doing, and giving an opportunity for everybody close to the light. Not if you're close to the light, you're working with the light, but are we all really feeling the presence of the light? we feeling the presence of the light, or we work for the light. So we're doing the light maybe even a favor. We're trying to spread the word of the light. We're doing the world a favor. Not doing anybody a favor. The bottom line is we're doing nobody a favor. And we're certainly not doing God a favor. It's only us that will ultimately benefit and have the simcha that we all would like. Chodesh Tov, everybody.
Did that mean that Aaron didn't have to, he didn't sit Shiva?
What?
Something like that, Shiva? Aaron. Was he even beyond that, or they didn't sit Shiva?
It doesn't, if you had a Shiva, it's a good question you asked. Why is it a good question? What?
Altogether.
Well, even he, an onan. You know what an onan means? No. Just in between,
the
right?
burial and the
Right.
death and burial.
He's not allowed to, he doesn't put on tefillin. I mean, he's just away from that, from connection, because he's too absorbed. But he didn't, there's no mention that he, what's that?
Where did the idea of sitting Shiva come from?
It's an old thing. It's an old thing. Even what? That, first of all, I mean, if I answer you they didn't need Shiva, then, from that can go out of here, this one says about his father, my father was a tzaddik, so why do I have to sit Shiva? So I'm afraid to even answer that question and put it down.
Where did they start Shiva altogether? Like, for instance, did Cain sit Shiva?
Yeah, that's right.
No,
Aaron. Did Aaron sit Shiva? That's right.
It said they mourned for Aaron when he died.
Right.
They mourned for Miriam.
30 days.
30 days.
That's right. So it was there at that time
Where
already.
did the idea of Shiva come from?
At that time.
No, when?
In the Torah. In the Torah. How do they glean it out from the Torah?
From where?
Well, if we see from Aaron, they were sitting in
Who
the
decided
Veilot.
on Sheva Brachot?
Who? Who decided on the
It's the
Sheva
same
Brachot? The first place it's mentioned is only in the Zohar. And in the Talmud. I shouldn't say only in the Zohar. But like 2,000 years ago.
Because it says that when he fulfilled the week,
Yeah,
Leah.
That's right. That's right.
So therefore he was...
It was all the time. It was all the time. But was it, could we find it written somewhere? No, until the Zohar, until the Talmud. These things you didn't see clearly. But like Aaron, when he passed away, it says they had Abelut for 30 days. That's what we even get, not only the 7, but we get the 30 days. Yeah. So, no. Doesn't say that he sat Shiva.
So he went even beyond that.
Yeah. And I don't want to say, but they may have gone beyond that too. They may have gone beyond that too. That's a nice question. Certainly if he was an Avel, he wouldn't be able to serve. A Navel means he's feeling the loss. And he should feel the loss. Then you turn around, you look at the other side. At every death anniversary, we're reminded about the loss, and we call it Yom Dihilula. It's only in Kabbalistic terminology. Like this is called the death anniversary, or the Yortzeit, right? Which means it's that year that is around again, where someone lost, a dear, a close one, that he sat Shiva and so on. So he has Yortzeit, but in Kabbalistic terminology, it's called Yom Dihilula, a day of praise, a day of partying, a day of joy. What does that mean? It means because they didn't die. They didn't die. Now, did they die? So Rashi makes a point, and the Zohar makes a point, of saying that the two sons died only, their souls did not die. From that you gather already that they went through the process of immortality. In other words, the bodies seem to disappear, can't see him no more.
But the soul went into Pinchas, so therefore, how could you say that the soul didn't die?
That's why he went back into Pinchas. If the soul
So
had died, had it been such a cardinal sin, then the soul would have sinned, and then it would have to go who knows where.
No, but it didn't leave him. The soul left. It wasn't immortal because it had to incarnate into Pinchas.
Yes, into another body.
But so
That's right.
so it wasn't in its form immortal. It had immortalized in another body.
That's right. A person dies,
No,
and Rabbi Shimon came back into the Moshe came back.
Right.
Moshe died. The Zohar says Moshe didn't die.
so a chelik, a piece.
You know what I mean? He just disappeared. He went to the other side of the curtain.
But they didn't go through the full process because they went through a full-blown body like a transmigration of soul.
Right. Exactly.
Any person who is going to Gan Eden just walked through a door, and we don't see that person anymore. And if that person even thought, but he was a tzaddik, but he thought that there is such a thing as mortality. And so in this new little book that I want to print already 4 years, it says that death is proof that it's only a door, because now the person's on the other side of it. He says, I'm alive. Now he knows that death is an illusion. Oh, but unfortunately only after he sees
After
himself
we get to the other side.
alive and well. Right.
Were their bodies in the Dark view?
Who?
They left their body in the Dark view?
Yeah, sure.
It was consumed.
It's consumed.
So they took their bodies.
The body exploded, imploded.
That's right.
Burned to the outside.
It was burned. It was burned.
Bodies were
There
burned.
was nothing.
But therefore the Rashi and the Zohar said,
Moshe told them to take the bodies.
that's right. The
Right.
body was
So
totally,
there were bodies though.
yes.
Yeah.
But that was an illusion. How could you say it?
No, I mean relatives are like Moses that took his body with him.
Or relative
They
to
were all
Aaron.
alive.
Aaron the same way. Relative to, well, Elio, it's obvious. I mean, he just went up, right? He just went up.
Very nice.
But that's the only way you get to real simcha. Without it, what you get, all of us here, whatever we may be doing, if you don't feel joy, then that's missing. And the only way you can get to it is whenever we are in that state where maybe we get upset, then you have to say to yourself, but that's chaos. Who wants it? Oh, he's telling you, but you're right. You're right. The other person is wrong. I mean, you're not going to let him get away with it. But that's chaos. But that's chaos. Chaos for both. Chaos for both. But he's so strong, especially if you permit your ego to really get the better of it.
Nah,
Yeah.
around here nobody's got
Okay, Chodesh Tov,